Thank you everyone for joining us for the 90th episode of the CEO Journey podcast, where we talk about all things business and entrepreneurship. Today, it is an absolute honour to be joined by the one and only Gregory Ebbs. Gregory is a UK-based entrepreneur, fresh off the Apprentice. So I'm sure we'll delve into that later on in the episode. But for now, Gregory, how are you doing?
I'm really good. Thank you so much for having me. This is really exciting sort of thing to be taking part of. So thanks so much for inviting me.
No, definitely. Well, we really appreciate you hopping on. But I think it's right, Gregory, to start off by just diving into your backstory. So, what was your upbringing like, and who was young Gregory Ebbs?
Oh, I mean, it's certainly an unusual backstory. So, for those who don't know, I've had quite a diverse background because I've been very fortunate that my parents are from two different countries. So my mother's from Thailand and she was brought up in Southeast Asia. And my father was born in Liverpool, out of all the places. I don't have a Scouse accent, I'm afraid. So yeah, I've been brought up with that sort of multicultural background because from a very young age, I've been very fortunate to have been given the opportunity to travel, especially to Thailand because I have a Thai passport. And so I used to live a lot with my family, and it sort of opened my eyes to the world because it gives you a certain understanding that the world is a very exciting place, but not everybody is as fortunate as one is, and therefore one must always try to do the best to sort of help others. That sort of feeling is quite ingrained with me. But it goes quite complicated. I don't know how much sort of depth you want it to be.
How much depth do you want, Gregory, with it?
Well, I was born in Chester, and I did my school and I did nursery in Chester. And then I was brought up in a beautiful place in northwest Wales where my family used to run a nice restaurant called Plas Cafe. It called Harlech, that was the town. And
right.
I was spent much of my youth in Harlech sort of walking up the mountains and exploring traveling and exploring the countryside. And my big passion is sort of history because you're just surrounded by it when you go to Wales. It's absolutely incredible. Ruins and everything. And I do love like cave exploration. So that's something I would love to sort of pick up again from my younger years. And again, core values and organizations really sort of ingrained themselves from a young age. So I was part of Scouts and part of Air Cadets. I did karate, I did Wildlife Wales.
Right.
And look, these sort of outdoor organizations or physical organizations sort of just, I was very fortunate because obviously a lot of people aren't given that sort of, a lot of people aren't really exposed to that sort of outside world, outside of the urban areas, especially if you're in a city. So being brought up with being able to do kayaking or sort of waiting next to a badger's hole for a badger to come out, something, it's quite nice, really. And obviously the Thai aspects, I used to go to Thailand and there's loads of wildlife in Thailand. And so, yeah, I spent much of my youth in Northwest Wales until I did A-level. So did GCSE, finished my GCSEs and went to Shropshire, and that's where I'm presently at.
Right. Okay.
And then, yeah, I mean, that's from a very sort of young age. And then in the meantime, I suppose, just sort of throw it out there, it was weird because not only have I sort of been brought up in this sort of historic background, all the properties we've lived in have been quite old, but from a very young age, I started collecting. And that's where my history enthusiasm sort of born. The age of 10, I think I bought my father bought me this wonderful flintlock musket in Nepalese. I got a sword and it's sort of grown for the last 16 years now. So yeah, soon to be 17 years, soon to go 27.
And I guess, is that what sparked the idea of Raven Antiques and having that initial interest in history and that sort of realm?
I mean, precisely. Raven Yard Antiques. So my family owned this shop in Whitchurch, and it's called Raven Yard Antiques. And the reason we call it that is because the property, Raven Yard, used to be a part of a larger property known as the Ravens Inn, which was first built in 1625. So it's got that sort of lineage which goes back because there's a yard, a cobbled yard, which is still there. And the property itself has got a 400-year-old name. And therefore, with the antique shop, therefore came the brand, which is Raven Yard Antiques, because it's an antiques business. So it makes sense to have a historical name which could sort of support that idea. And therefore, it's gone from just being a shop. We still have a shop, but the website, which is what I own. So there's two separate businesses there. Right. There's a shop, which my family runs, and there's the website, which I run, is now a marketplace, but based on that name, sort of encompassing the brand.
Okay, no, that's really interesting. And to just trace it back a little bit, did you have any sort of insights into entrepreneurship at a young age, way before in that earlier context that you were talking about?
I mean, my father's always been very entrepreneurial. I certainly know that for a fact. He's run a multitude of businesses. He's got he started, this is a very funny one. My father has got a Cambridge degree in kitchen fitting,
Right.
which is a one-day course.
That was a thing.
which he did to qualify to fit kitchens. And his background's like accountancy, but then he's also run like building merchants, and he's run a multitude of hotels and restaurants and cafes and a variety. And obviously having a background in accountancy is not really relevant, obviously, other than the financial side. So from a young age, my father's always sort of always tried to, he likes building stuff and likes sort of creating his own business. I think it's probably been ingrained from that. So from a personal perspective, school, I remember I used to sell lots of sweets. I got in trouble once to the students until the teachers started buying sweets off me. So I'm sure, I'm not sure how far that rule went. And then with the antiques collecting, I've been collecting for a long time, and with collecting is obviously the process of buying and selling. So selling of antiques helps me cover some of the funds of sort of university, which is obviously quite expensive. So selling the odd items sort of kept me afloat for a bit. So there's that side of things as well, which I suppose it is to a certain extent entrepreneurship. Yeah.
So where did you go to university then?
I went to university in two places. I have a master's degree and a bachelor's.
Right.
So my bachelor's was Aberystwyth. Obviously coming from Wales, I had to go back to Wales. So Aberystwyth University, beautiful place. Went there many times, even before I went there. And my bachelor's degree was military history and international relations. So again, you can see the canon side of things in that respect. And then after I finished university, I got a job in Malta, and whilst I was working on the island, I discovered that a master's degree on the island, this is especially prevalent for the viewers, at least when I went, was £500. So I paid £500 a 1-year master's degree in strategic management public policy. I did want a scuba diving qualification, like maritime archaeology, but that's a lot more money, so I couldn't afford that. But my master's degree in strategic management public policy was £500. So I was able to afford that from working on the side, and therefore didn't incur any debt. Whereas had I done a master's here in the country, it would have been £10,000 or something. So I was quite fortunate in that respect. I think it still applies, actually.
So where did because I've seen some things about you working with cannons or running some operation in Malta. Can you just elaborate on that in terms of what you're actually doing there?
So that's a sort of a really good question. When I finished my bachelor's degree, there was a period of time where I didn't have much going on. I was obviously, you finish university and it's quite difficult to sort of get your foot through the door in anything. So I just started selling on the side uniforms. I had loads of them sort of sitting around my university bedroom. And I was trying to sort of make a basic living for myself, or to just cover some costs, etc. And one of my customers happened to be a man called Mario Ferrugia. Sort of checked out his website and saw he's like the CEO of Fondazione Italia, which is this museum in Malta. It's a fantastic organization. And turns out that I'd sold, I don't know, 1,200 quid's worth of uniforms to this man called Mario. And I looked at his website and found out he had job vacancies, and I didn't have a job at the time. I was just selling uniforms. So I thought, you know what? This seems quite a cool job. Title, professional cannon firer. So I applied for the job. I got the job from selling Victorian uniforms to him, and obviously 2 weeks later I figured, you know what, I'm just going to go to Malta. I've never been to this country. It seems a really exciting adventure. So I booked a one-way ticket to Malta, booked myself into for a month into this very, very rough shared accommodation. I think my bed collapsed at one point because of the wood rot of the bed. And then from there on, 3 years in Malta. And obviously on the side, I did a bunch of things whilst I was there. So I obviously did the cannon fire, did the master's degree, and I got some other qualifications and other stuff. But as to the terms of the job, it wasn't just cannon firing. So it's not like you sort of you stand there and shoot cannons all day. It's just one of many jobs. So I think the proper sort of job role is interpretations. It wasn't it? It was later. Museum reenactor or something along those lines. And that basically involves cannon firing, rifle displays, Victorian drill. My background, my speciality is Victorian uniforms, so it's very sort of interesting from that respect. When I first went, we still doing horse riding as well, lance displays, but we didn't do that when in the later on. And also, so we had some really cool sites there at Fondat Sierra. We had those tunnels, which I got to go into. And there's 28,000 square meters of underground tunnels just sat beneath your feet from the Second World War. These tunnels go back to the Knights of St. John around the 1560s. But later on, they were repurposed from a sally port to that of an underground military base. And this military base was where the defense of Malta was planned when, 16,000 tons of bombs were dropped on the island in the space of only a couple of years, and over 30,000 buildings destroyed. I'm not sure how accurate those figures are, but the point is this was such a cool, exciting adventure to go down these tunnels and get the keys and take people down this journey of the War HQ tunnel tour in Lascaux War. So, yeah, I mean, there's a multitude of different roles. Obviously, the cannon is the most poignant and most memorable thing, so that's why I always keep mentioning it.
Yeah, definitely. So you had those particular experiences in Malta, which clearly were, very good for you. And then what made you want to go back to the UK and, start doing things there?
I mean, so this sort of comes down to lockdown, doesn't it? I mean, lockdown comes, hospitality industry, museum industry, everything's just shut down. Anything involving meeting up with people is just closed. I was a bit, I just finished my master's degree by that point, just about. Right. And lockdown comes, and I have to return to the UK because there's no job opportunities in Malta. I mean, the whole of the island is based on hospitality. So, and I was planning on returning anyway. So I returned to Malta, and I was looking for stuff to do. And my father said, "Hey, we've got this shop, Raven Yard Antiques. Help us out with it." And he just built this website for the shop. And the website was absolutely appalling. Well, from that website, I figured, actually, there's an opportunity here. He wanted just a personal website for our stock. But then I thought, actually, eBay is really expensive. You can't sell antique militaria on eBay without certain restrictions. They take a 12.5% commission, and it's a real hassle. So it takes ages to upload an object. I think it took me around between 5 and 20 minutes, whereas my website's a bit quicker to put an object on. So these processes sort of came into mind, and I was thinking, actually, if I can teach myself to code, how about I build a website which can actually do a similar job to these platforms, but is more of a club rather than just a marketplace. So my website, Raven Yard Antiques, doesn't just do sales, in the sense of it doesn't just allow you to market your objects, but does a bunch of other features, which I'm sure I'll explain a bit shortly. But so, yeah, it sort of came from there, really. And then over the last 2 years, I've sort of been very invested in this business idea. Strongly believe there's a market opportunity here. And so for 2 years, I taught myself to code in a bunch of different programming. So I don't have a technical background, but I felt that with enough time in your hands, and especially with a lockdown, it's definitely doable. So I built the website coded-wise. I haven't used WordPress or anything because I built it on my sort of vision for this product, and as it grows, the website changes organically. But there's been 2 years of hard labor and work.
No, definitely. And so, what languages did you use to actually code the website? I'm guessing was it HTML? Anything else? Or
so obviously, hypertext markup language is a key aspect. But I mean, the actual object-oriented programming is in the form of PHP, and I use a bit of Ajax on the side. So PHP only gets initialized if you have to click the submit button, unless you've got Ajax, which gets it to run concurrent as the user's using it. So I'd used a bit of Ajax, PHP, and a bit of JavaScript and jQuery, both sort of formats. And yeah, just sort of working from there, to be honest. Right. And then, the website's now running with 2,000 objects or something. And the website crashed the other day. 10,000 people visited it in 30 seconds.
Gosh, that's incredible. So, how long was the process in teaching yourself how to code to actually coding? Because I've had a look at the website, and it's amazing. It's amazing. It's incredibly well optimized and designed really well. So yeah, how long was that process?
It's always ongoing. I mean, literally just before I was doing this podcast, I was doing slight tweaks and changes. I mean, there are some things where, so when you first build a website, you host it on a local server and then you put it live. So you save it and you run it on your computer and then you run it online. And like, I was just doing some changes and I thought these edits fixed the website locally. You upload it, bunch of different bugs altogether.
Right.
So, I mean, the point is it's always working. I mean, to get to the stage I am, it's gone from day one of a lockdown to now to sort of get to the stage. And I don't know if that's particularly slow or fast. I don't know, but it's been very challenging, definitely, to sort of get to that. I think this is like the 4th iteration of the website. So first I did WordPress and then I studied a bit of Wix, but obviously Wix is just a website builder, so you don't really get any code. Same with WordPress, I suppose. And then you teach yourself object-oriented programming, and then you upload an image, and it takes like 2 hours to upload the image. So then you're trying to find a faster way to do it. And now I'm using a framework which speeds up development time, which is called Laravel, which is a PHP framework. So it's every day is a learning curve, and it's taken me 2 years to get to this stage. But it doesn't stop. It will take, for however long I have a business, I expect it to gradually develop and change for the duration that business is sort of running.
And you've mentioned that the reason why you decided to teach yourself programming instead of using, like Wix or any like sites like WooCommerce. I mean, there's even Shopify as well, was because you wanted to create it in your own vision and how you see it. Is that the main reason? I
mean, to some extent. I mean, the thing with sort of more so with Wix and Shopify is you don't really, you're using somebody else's code, so using somebody else's intellectual property. And my website does more than just the basic selling. So I've developed, so one of the things my business, which I noticed with, one thing which my business does, which a lot of other businesses don't do, and I could have only done this from coding it myself, is we have a sales and stock reporting system. So when you upload an object, you can actually put the cost price of your object into the object. So by the end of the year, you can print off an A4 spreadsheet with a cost, profit, loss of everything you've got. So I've got 2,000 items in inventory, and I can look at this and I can print off a report, and it'll say how much I've made, how much I've lost, the data purchased. And if I've got buyer invoice codes and other stuff, I could put that in. So it's all saved. So instead of managing it all on an Excel sheet, it's all managed automatically on this online system.
No, that's smart. I didn't think about that at all.
And the website is growing. I mean, one thing which, in my opinion, sets my website aside and what will drive it forward and make it really successful is the idea of linking multiple websites together. So one thing which I've just built for a client, and I'll make it live very shortly for him, is I've just built this website. He's got this website. I think his domain name is appentantiques.com or .co.uk. I'll have a look. And what I've done is every object he puts in his personal website will now automatically go on Raven Yard Antiques. And every object he deletes from Raven Yard Antiques will be deleted from his personal website. And that means, imagine if you've got 1,000 websites which you built for a client, that's 1,000 people who are going to be consistently using the website, because how can they not use their personal website if they've paid for it? So Raven Yard Antiques is about creating a network. It's creating this marketplace, but club, more importantly, where people are all connected to one another. And if they're all managed from a single platform, it saves people our time. So instead of having to put stuff separately in your account on eBay and separate account on your Etsy page and separate accounts on, Gumtree and then your website, what about you put it on Raven Yard Antiques and it goes on your personal website automatically? It's just saves so much time and effort.
Win-win.
So it's a win-win. And I'm developing some new stuff which will, let's say, crawl information from other people's websites and make it appear. So at the moment, all I can do is have to code the website from scratch and then integrate. But in the future, I want to use pre-existing websites and draw all the information and get it on the database.
No, that makes complete sense, yeah.
But definitely. I mean, it's just about that. It's about saving, from coming from an antiques point of view, but not coming from a technical background, having just taught myself in my spare time. It's given you sort of an idea of what people want. So instead of saying, hey, to other people, we've got all these other users who are checking it out. How about use the website? I can go up to people and say, hey, I've got 2,000 of my own personal objects on it, and I'm regularly using this website. Plus I've built it. Plus we've got 250 people using it. Plus we've got, a lot of stock, and we have 10,000 people. But I'm approaching people from a a retailer's perspective, I can say, hey, we've got all this stuff from the shop which is going on the website.
Yeah.
I always have to test it. And whereas a lot of developers who build these sites, they don't test their own product because they're just instructed how to build it by somebody who does test it. But I'm both. So I can clean it up and I can communicate my thoughts better with the client. And I also understand the market more because I come from that particular background.
No, that's incredible. So you've obviously got like the seller side, and then you've got the consumers who are coming on the website to buy the antiques. How do you go about attracting users to the site and sellers to actually list their antiques on your marketplace?
Well, it's organic, isn't it? The way I see it, it's very organic. Every website you build for a client, that client is going to use the website. They're going to put their stuff on the website because they want to promote their objects. But on the other hand, if every object they put to their personal website goes from Raven Yard Antiques, then automatically that's more stock which is going to be appearing on the marketplace. And with the more stock which appears in the marketplace and the more people who are linked to the website, that's more guaranteed users to the website every month. So it's organic there. It grows.
Yeah.
And people will always promote their own personal business because you're obviously trying to make a living. So there's that side of things. And obviously with the stock, with the quantity of stock as it grows, imagine you've got 2,000 objects in inventory, all put on Raven Antiques. Well, as that inventory grows, so does your page visibility in Google, because that's 2,000 more pages which are going to be popping up on the search engine ranking. So if you type down 9-carat gold ring, I don't think, I know my website does, 9-carat gold rings do appear from the website, but it doesn't appear on the top search engine ranking. But either way, imagine if you've got 2,000 of those objects, then there's 2,000 more pages which are more likely to appear to Google search engine ranking. And when an item is marked as sold, I programmed it so the item's not deleted, but it's simply marked as sold on the system, but it still appears in the Google search engine. So it's that visibility plus the scale, plus connecting people together, which will gradually sort of grow the business. And sort of the Apprentice has been really good from that angle because it's given me that sort of legitimacy to sort of scale up the business. We've already got a bunch of people who are selling objects on it. We've got people who have sold objects on it. Yeah. And we've also got clients who have signed up for their websites to be built. So it's organically growing. And within the antiques industry, there's a big opportunity. And I think I'm the perfect one to capitalize it because I'm not going in with a team of people, but instead I build it myself. So I'm cheap. At the moment, the website's free to use. Right. I get my revenue because I build people websites. But in the future, it'd be £1 per listing per object, which is not a lot because eBay charges 12.5% commission. But on the other hand, for me, it's profitable because I incur no cost. I don't pay staff. I don't pay anybody else to do it. So as the website grows, obviously that might change in the future, but as it grows, at least I'm able to keep my costs down, which is so important, in my opinion, for a startup business. Yeah, no, 100%. And so I guess before we get onto the Apprentice, what is your overall vision for Raven Yards Antique? And, has growth since launching that marketplace, has growth been exponential? What's that been like? It's been tricky because it's been 2 years of work and it's refining and there are always glitches with things.
I can imagine.
Sometimes you sort of edit a price on the database and it edits to something which you don't want it to do, or perhaps someone puts a squiggly line in an arrow key and it messes up the code. There's always subtleties which are always a bit challenging, but at first it was slow. It's been 2 years to get to this stage. It's been very difficult for the last 2 years because we haven't had visibility, and therefore the number of users has been difficult. But because of the Apprentice, and fortunately because of the association with being a historical canon guy, people have been coming up to me. So last week we had 10,000 people visit the website in 30 seconds, so the website crashed. Wow. But last month, i.e. January as a whole, we had 20,000 people who visited the website. And personally, I can say that I'm selling items every day now, just because people are visiting it. And I know other people are selling it. And obviously, that'll sort of calm down with the Apprentice. But with the clients who sign up to the website, it'll gradually sort of grow back up over time. My vision, on the other hand, for the business is quite a large one. My website's not an eBay in the conventional sense. eBay charges high commission cost. They limit the objects which you want to sell on the website, and they only allow you to put stuff on the website if you do a bulk upload for a CSV file, or you use to add new products. With my website, it's more than that. It's a club, because people can actually call me up and say, "Hey, Greg, we've got this issue. Can you fix it? Hey, Greg, I've got these suggestions. What do you think?" We can implement that. We can work together on this sort of thing, because it benefits both the user and myself to have the most amazing product. So my goal is sort of get people working and networking together. So I'd love to get forums and chat, methods of communication for particular users. One really good tool which I've found to be exceptionally useful is the software Photo Room. Photo Room is this wonderful app where you can take a photo with your phone, and it removes the background image, the background colors of his object. So you only see like a white background with his object. What I don't get is why no one's actually incorporated that with a marketplace platform. So instead of having to download your app and then take the photos, save the images on your app, on your phone, and then upload the images, why can't you incorporate the software? So lots of subtleties. And this massive network. Imagine if there's 74 million people in this country. There's thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people who have antiques in their homes. Why, instead of everyone having a separate website where none of them communicate with one another, why not have a bunch of websites all feeding into one marketplace platform so everybody benefits? Because everyone gets that visibility. Yeah,
and it's that community feel at the end of the day, isn't it?
Precisely, it's that community feel. It's instead of sort of going through Amazon and Etsy and all these where you have to use this anonymous chat service. I mean, one thing my website does is it doesn't have a payment system. And so what we do instead, I mean, that may change in the future, but what we do instead is we encourage people by we pass over the email of the seller to the buyer and the buyer to the seller, so the two can communicate directly outside of the website. So we don't try to manage their conversations. And that, again, that's a community feel. The buyer feels a bit more comfort because he's actually talking to the other person, the other end of the phone, or the other end of the email. And the seller's more confident because they can actually communicate directly with the buyer. And I don't need to manage the money, because eBay was so successful when it first came out because they managed money. But now there's PayPal and there's Stripe. And there's so many which actually you can pay for goods and services. You pay 2% commission instead of 12.5% commission, and they hold your goods if it gets damaged or anything. But it gives, at the end of the day, you don't need to fork out 12.5% commission on objects which are a hassle to put on a website, which are expensive to sell, etc.
No, definitely. So it's been really interesting to talk to you about Raven Antiques. It's great to see your vision for the future. I can definitely see it becoming successful. I know my mum, she's a big collector of antiques, so and she likes to she likes to sell them as well. So maybe I'll be telling her about Raven Antiques so she can list some of the stuff on your website. But it'd be great to talk about the Apprentice now, if that's okay with you, Gregory.
Absolutely, go for it.
So I guess the first thing I want to understand is what motivated you to actually go onto the show?
I mean, that's a good question. I've been a big fan of the show for a long, long time. I remember, I'm not sure if I watched the first season, but it certainly goes back to a similar period. And I've always watched it, and it just looks it looks so sort of exciting when you see it on the cameras, all the camera shots and everything, and the task. You think, anybody could do this. So honestly, like my family have been a big part of my life, and they sort of encouraged me up to that point. And so it led to my sort of, with that suggestion by the family, and then obviously seeing the show, I put the application in. Just an interesting sort of anecdote for the users. I didn't submit my application until 10 seconds before the deadline because I actually get so I intended to submit it the week before, but I got carted to E&E with kidney stones. So I didn't get discharged from the hospital until the day that the applications were closing. I didn't get home and I wasn't able to submit my application until 10 seconds before the deadline. So it was there was like 50-50 chance I would even been able to put the application in time. But I mean, that's pretty much what sort of led me to applying, and let's say it's quite an interesting process.
So did you have like a mentality before going into it, knowing what you wanted to achieve, or was it just you had an initial interest in the show, so you thought, let's give it a go?
I think it's important to sort of be mindful that a lot of people apply for the show. Like, I don't know. I read it online. And I read online, I could entirely be incorrect, that there's 60,000 people applied. So like the chances of you getting on that show are challenging.
Yeah.
But what you soon discover is that anything's doable in life. And I think the show's sort of ingrained that sort of mentality. If someone like me can actually get on the show, then anyone can. And yeah, I mean, I went in, I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't even sure I'd get on it. I mean, I can't tell you much about the application process itself, but I would say it was quite demanding and it was certainly quite unexpected. So to sort of receive that call saying, congratulations, you're now on, was quite quite an honor and sort of real exciting adventure. But I went in with an open mind, because honestly, you have no idea what to expect. There's no way you can plan or prepare for the application process. And there's no way you can actually prepare for when you're on the show itself. There's a lot of things which are, I mean, I don't know. I've never dealt with big camera work before, so I have no idea what to expect there.
No, 100%. And like you said, you know, the chance of you actually getting onto the show is very slim. So in your eyes, I don't know if you've been told by other people, but what would you say made you stand out from all those other applicants?
I mean, I suppose my advice for anyone sort of going on the show is do try to be sort of honest to yourself. Don't try to sort of overblow yourself in any particular manner, because it might not work in your favor. I mean, at least from my personal perspective, I went on, obviously talk about cannons, but I tried to make it close to home. I mean, I said, hey, I find cannons for a living and I've got this great sort of business idea. And I think about sort of honest integrity or authenticity, is probably, I don't know, it could have been a sort of factor into why they sort of allowed me to proceed into the later stages of the process. But I mean, I've always had quite a quirky and different background. And I just try to capitalize on what I'd already experienced in, and whilst at the same time trying to be honest with myself and who I am. And I thought cannons, I mean, it wasn't the only part of my job, granted, but it was sort of the catchiest race. I think that probably helped a bit. It certainly raised a few eyebrows. No,
definitely. And because on the show, I mean, like, you're exposed to the whole world of backlash, you know, people talking about it, cameras every single day. It's far different from, you know, your life before, isn't it? So did you feel like a state of vulnerability being on there, or were you thinking, look how people are going to perceive me, or were you just like, I don't really care, I'm going to be myself?
I mean, from my side, I think you've got to be a bit conscientious. So like when I sort of put the app, when the actual filming took place, you have to be mindful that if there's a big camera in front of your face, don't pick your nose or something. Or don't pick your nose in the wrong way. I mean, you've got to be mindful of that. But I mean, that's not just with camera work. That's just in general. You are in a working environment. You are trying to secure people's investments. So you've got to be professional and respectful at all times. So obviously there's a mindful that anything that you say will be televised to people, or could be televised to people. But on the other hand, I don't see why you should behave differently on camera as you would in a business meeting. You should be equally as professional and respectful to your candidates. And at least in my opinion, that's how I tried to sort of stay with that sort of narrative. I said, hey, I don't want to say anything which you might regret, not necessarily just because of TV, but just because I believe that if you're working with these people and there's life after the show, so you want to stay in contact with these people, and therefore there's more than just the investment. There's maintaining connections and networking and leaving people with a positive impression of yourself. Sort of your reputation, in my opinion, is equally as important as the investment, because that's how people sort of perceive you and they respect you, or they don't respect you, depends how it goes. So yeah, I mean, that was sort of my narrative at the time. Just try to be authentic, but don't try to say anything which you might not say in a professional environment.
No, definitely. And so you've touched on it with like the benefits of actually going on the show. But if you had to sort of pick out the top 3 benefits that you've accrued from being on the show now coming out, what would those 3 things be?
I mean, it's certainly ingrained that the first thing is to get on the show is a massive accomplishment. Yeah. Like everybody gets on the show, whether you go in week 1 or to the end, it makes no difference. You're on the show. There's a lot of people apply. So to get that far is like a massive pat on the back. Congratulations to each and every person. So that's the first benefit. It ingrains that mentality, which is anything's doable, anything's possible. You just need to set your goal, and then obviously, hopefully, you should reach it. You'll never reach the stars if you don't set your mind to the stars. So go with an open mind and just see how it goes, but always sort of set yourself a goal. So that mentality is number one. Number two, it's difficult to say. I suppose the networking you get, it's incredible. These people that go on the show, I mean, obviously my interaction is different to how many people see them on camera, because I live with these people. It is challenging living with a bunch of people you've never lived or never met before, but it's equally as rewarding. And I think there's certain camaraderie which is sort of built in that house, which is quite nice. So especially with a lot of the contestants, I intend to sort of stay in contact with them and friendships and connections. These people could be super successful people in the future. And I feel very lucky to have worked with them. And I consider myself fortunate to develop these sort of good connections with my fellow candidates as a consequence, but not just them. Like when you're dealing with businesses on the tasks and stuff, same applies as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And obviously, when you got fired, there was a lot of controversy surrounding, a lot of people saying, it was unfair, because it seemed like you were, that task wasn't your strong point. Okay. And then they sort of focused on that and decided to fire you because it wasn't your strong point. And that's from my perspective. And to me, that seems a little bit unfair. So, from your perspective, how do you view, you getting fired from them? What do you reckon it was unfair? What's your standpoint?
I mean, maybe at the time I probably should have, sort of looking back into that board, and perhaps I should have made my point clear. I mean, sort of watching the boardroom take place in previous tasks and also on TV, I was sort of very mindful, but I didn't want to say anything which I wanted to be respectful, and I didn't want to say anything which might. I wanted to keep it straight to the facts. I didn't want to make accusations or anything. So perhaps at times I should have been. I was a bit more quiet and therefore didn't put my case strong enough, especially in that boardroom. So maybe that was a factor. But sort of, I mean, it's challenging. I mean, I worked with Reese, and I mean, Reese is a very, very smart bloke. Very, very smart. And I've got a lot of respect for him. And so, like, perhaps they just felt that at the end of the day, Lord Sugar's looking for a business partner, and perhaps he just felt that Reese was more suited to that particular angle than myself. I mean, one can make the case, which is I'm sort of specializing in antiques, and therefore my business. He specialized in acting, but he lost his task and I won mine. But they sort of look at it sort of a wider narrative as well. And I suppose, I mean, I don't obviously necessarily agree with Lord Sugar's decision, but at the same time, I see where he's coming from, and I completely respect that. And it's a challenging sort of situation. But no, I mean, I've got no ill will against anyone or anything like that. It was a cool adventure. It's a pity that I went so early on. I would have liked to demonstrate more skills, but at the same time, it's been a great opportunity as well. And I mean, good for Reese. I mean, I look forward to, he's surviving up to now. I look forward to seeing how he goes in later episodes.
Are you rooting for him to win, or?
Oh, I can't comment there.
Okay. Well, I guess another point I wanted to understand is the overall, reality of the show. If you can talk a bit about that. Is it everything that we see completely real? Is anything staged? What's the case with that?
I can't. It's not staged. The show is not staged. It's fair. I mean, they make that very, very clear when you sort of go on. It is fair. It's challenge. There's a lot of time constraints on the tasks, and obviously, like, you're doing stuff which you've never done before as well. I mean, okay, the cannons was useful because I've done it, but the cartoons, like the boys' team, we had no idea. At least, so my team wasn't boys. It was mixed platform, wasn't it? So Reese's team. Actually, that's incorrect. Let me go back to the Balbuns. Actually, the Balbuns boys' team, but. None of us had made bao buns before. None of us knew how to do it. None of us came from a culinary background. Yeah. So the time constraints followed with like the lack of experience of that particular field, which sort of sometimes leads to some questionable outcomes with the product. But it's not fixed in any respect. It's just it's challenging because you've never worked with these people, you've never spoken to them in your lives. I mean, by that time point, it's week 2, so we barely knew each other's names by that point. And now we've got to go to London, and we've been mixed out with sub teams now, so we've never worked with this lot. And then we're told, hey, you've got to wake up at X o'clock in the morning, make bao buns and sell them into London Square. I mean, sometimes it leads to comedic and sometimes slightly unfortunate products sort of coming out of that process.
No, okay, yeah, no, definitely, and thank you for sharing that. But like we've had a don't know if you know Lee McQueen. He obviously won The Apprentice in one of the earlier seasons, and I asked him about his life after The Apprentice, and he shared, it was completely different. He had, media at his door, and I'm sure it's a bit different now, but what has it been like coming out of The Apprentice? What has the intention been like? Have you been, swamped with people? Have people been coming up to you in the streets? Or, what is it like?
I mean, I've sort of done my best to make sure that my life hasn't changed because of the show. I mean, it's very easy to sort of get into that mentality that you're famous, etc. But it's important to be quite grounded when this process comes out. And lots of people do know you, but it's a show at the end of it. It's a process, an application process at the end of the day. So it's you mustn't let it get to your head. But I mean, it's been considerable. I've received thousands and thousands of messages from people on Instagram and social media in general. And I went to where was it? Buckingham the other day, and people just collared me on the street like the tourist information officers and said, "I recognise you from the show." She asked for a photo in the museum and stuff. So it's been quite nice in that respect. And I had a handful of businesses sort of approach me, but I mean, it's nice, but my life hasn't changed in that respect. It's been more well known, but I'm in a public role anyway. Because I'm a councillor, so I was quite well known in my local area anyway. So I'm quite used to this sort of exposure and dealing with the press in that respect. But it's been quite a sort of adventure. I mean, it's certainly opened more doors. That's what the show's really given me. It's given me about legitimacy. People now recognise me because of the show, and they're willing to sort of have that conversation with you, which would be more difficult without the show, because obviously you're just an unknown person who's walked through the door. Now you've got that legitimacy of having appeared on the UK's largest TV series and trying to compete for Lord Sugar's investment. So in that respect, business-wise, it's been absolutely great. It's fantastic. From a personal perspective, more people recognise you. But at the same time, it's really, really nice that people recognise you. But I don't see why it should sort of stop you from going out or stop you going for meals with the family or anything. Because at the end of the day, it's really important to stay grounded in that respect.
No, definitely. And a question just came into my head. It might seem a bit stupid, but do you get to see Lord Sugar off camera? Do you speak to him off camera? Or what?
No, it's all on. What you see there is pretty much what you get. Like,
right, okay.
When you sort of see his shadow slowly come out of the boardroom, I mean, that's literally it. That's the first time we've seen him. I mean, it's quite intense. I suppose it's more intense in person because you're sat there on the chair, and you've got the judges in front of you, the experts in front of you, and then you've got Lord Sugar coming out, and you see this massive billionaire tycoon come out on camera. You've never seen it, but you know him because you've seen him on TV. It's quite a surreal experience in that respect. But actually, just being there after having undergone a lengthy process is very nerve-wracking. But we didn't speak to him outside the camera. Literally, what you saw is our experience.
Right, no, that's interesting. And you talked about the doors opening up after you've come out of the show. What opportunities have accrued for you? I
mean, so a few. Obviously, the business is growing. I've now created a social media page which is called Gecko. I've got some really good friends, Show and Joe, who are massive social media buffs. They've really helped me with the quality of my production. And so Gecko stands for Gregory Ebbs Cinematic Universe. We're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, etc. So we've got lots of visibility there. And our goal is to visit like museums, historical sites, and we're sort of just experimenting with the way that we're doing the content. But the goal is to sort of visit these places and do really informative and sort of interactive videos, sort of promoting history or promoting particular organizations, etc. So that's something that we're sort of trying to capitalize on. We've got a few sort of lined up and involved. There's something which we want to do more in the future. Would be great if we could get some, I don't know, stuff in talking about the Mayan pyramids in South America or something. I mean, just imagine if we got invited there, that'd be such a cool adventure. So stuff like that. And then followed on by that, I would be very interested. It hasn't happened yet. We'll just have to see what happens. But I would love to get involved in TV work, especially like historical TV shows and stuff.
I can see that in your personality, to be honest, Gregory. I think you'd be a great TV presenter or anything. Yeah, definitely.
I think that'd be really cool. I mean, sort of just thinking back to the old days of Time Team. I mean, that was always quite exciting. Watching them sort of dig up this Roman fort's ruins and finding what did you find here? Is a Roman coin from the first century, something. I mean, or perhaps Antiques Road Trip, or that's pretty much the angle which I'd love to get involved in, because I think it'd be an incredible experience and it allows me to sort of showcase my passions in that respect. But then there's the other aspect, which is I am a councillor and I stood for town level, and I think I'll restand for county level, and perhaps just see how politics goes in sort of a long run from there.
No, definitely. And if you'd say, what's one key thing that you've learned from coming off the show that you're now implementing in your day-to-day running of your business and just overall life?
I think it goes back to what I previously said, which is, I suppose, two aspects. It's a difficult one to sort of answer, but I'd probably say something along the lines of always set yourself a target. Never take no for an answer. Anything's doable. And the show has definitely sort of shown me that. Anything is doable. My business is growing. I've got onto this TV show. My business crashed because 10,000 people visited it in 30 seconds, something I wouldn't have ever believed. And from there, opportunities, I mean, life is one's oyster, I suppose, is the best sort of way of describing, which is sort of don't set yourself limitations on what you can achieve, but obviously set yourself realistic deadlines on how to achieve those goals. But anything's possible if you put your mind to it. And the show's sort of shown that. I mean, if I can go from promoting cannons in Antigua to making bao buns to doing cartoons, which is a bit unfortunate there, given the firing, then obviously the world is one's oyster. Anything's possible. It might take a bit more time for some than others, but it's definitely doable.
No, that's a great bit of insight. And I think that's a lovely place to wrap up this podcast on. Gregory, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. It's been great talking to you about everything.
Thank you so much.
Have you got any last words for the viewers? Anything you'd like me to put in the description or shout out?
So a couple of shout-outs. So big shout out to Benji from the Harlech Scout Hub. Massive part in my sort of childhood. He does so much work at sort of promoting not only the youth events and organisations, but he supports the town, and he also does a lot of work with animals, more specifically birds of prey, peregrine falcons and stuff. So nurses them back to health. So he does. So big shout out to him and the Air Cadets, and big shout out to my team, Joe and Show, who have done, and my family, who have been a massive inspiration throughout this whole process and have been really supportive of that. And I say, if any of you want to sort of follow me, check out my Instagram, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Geku, it's my Gregory Ebbs Cinematic Universe, and check out my website. And any questions, just drop me an email or give me a phone call. Definitely, we'll be putting all of that in the description for viewers to read and look through. But yeah, thank you once again, Gregory. I wish you all the best of luck with anything in the future, anything you've got in the pipeline. And also, obviously, with Raven Antiques, and hopefully that goes as successful as you would like it to be. So, yeah, no, absolute pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Be sure to give it a like, subscribe, and also feel free to join our Discord community, which we've just opened for any entrepreneur at any stage of their journey. We'd love to meet you there. So, yeah, thank you very much.